Wonderful to have you here today, Sophia. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me.
Really excited about the topic. I know we have a lot in common in terms of sustainable high performance, well-being, health, and not burning ourselves out in our work.
Oh, yeah.
So what would be your definition of mental fitness? I know this is something that you often talk about. How would you define mental fitness?
So mental fitness for me is being aware of the things that you do and, not being aware of it, but that are self-sabotaging either your performance, your relationships, or your health. But being aware of that, you can counteract it with something that's called the sage perspective, which is basically your inner wisdom or prefrontal cortex. And when you activate that part, you get access to all of this, really mental, both the mental strength, but also your possibility to think in a more creative way, but also in a more conscious way, like making really good decisions, not based on your fears or shame or stress or anxiety, but based on, your true wisdom. And this way you will increase your performance. You will feel better. You will make better decisions. You will be a nicer person to be around. So it's all about recognizing these saboteurs, counteracting them, and activating your sage powers, basically.
I know that that's the model of positive intelligence with the
Yeah.
different saboteurs and the sage. So how can people, let's say someone listening to this said, okay, that sounds good. I want to tap into my inner wisdom and make great decisions. How can they start to shift some of these inner voices, some of these patterns that they have to the sage and this wisdom way of approaching things?
Yeah, so I would say the quickest way to do that is by becoming aware of what's going on right now in the present moment. Because mindfulness, as you know, is an incredibly powerful tool to get in contact with what's going on right now and to become present to what's going on in your head, in your body, in your surroundings. And when we activate our prefrontal cortex, it's like doing a quick mindfulness exercise will activate your prefrontal cortex. You will get out of survival brain or survival mode, which is back here. And that will make you more, responsive rather than reactive. So a quick mindfulness exercise can be as simple as noticing your feet on the ground. So say that you're in a really stressful situation. Say that you are in a meeting and you're having a difficult conversation with your team member or your manager or someone else. And you're just noticing that, okay, I have all of these thoughts in my head that are, really messing with me, and just pay attention to your feet. Okay, can I feel my feet right now? Where are they? Can I notice my 10 toes on the ground? Can I notice my breathing? Or maybe as simple as rubbing your fingers together. That's a classical PQ rep within positive intelligence. Because what happens then is that you switch from survival brain to the PQ brain or the prefrontal cortex, because that's what mindfulness does to you. Like, it will activate these more sophisticated parts of the brain, and that will make you in a totally different state. And just doing that, it sounds super easy, but the more you practice, and the also more you practice mindfulness outside of, more stressful context, the more you will be able to tap into that kind of awareness and calmness and centeredness, even when you're not doing the exercises.
Yes, I think being present is a huge, huge help when it comes to shifting our patterns and also just slowing down the thoughts that are always there and using our senses, like you said, so touch, but also listening to the sound far away, really observing what's going on. But let's say, okay, someone manages to tune in, be present, be mindful, and they notice maybe some thought patterns, a saboteur kicking in, maybe a people pleaser voice, maybe a high achiever. What if I mess up? What if this fails? Then what are the next steps? How do they shift these inner voices and saboteurs to more wisdom and calmness after being present?
Yeah, exactly. So to make that a bit longer explanation. So, for example, the positive intelligence program is all about first discovering your saboteurs. because you cannot change what you're not aware of. So the first step is to become aware which saboteurs, and they've defined 10 saboteurs, which of these are messing with you the most? Because all of us have saboteurs in some level or another. And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with us or that we're broken or we need to be fixed. It's not that. It's more recognizing that these have been sabotaging us maybe for our entire life without us being aware. So first step is to become aware of them, and then to be able to label them. Like you said, exactly, that pleaser saboteur, for example, is to see, okay, maybe where does it come from and how is it messing with, for example, my health? Say it turns out like you can't say no, set boundaries. That's a classical example that will impact your health and your career and your relationships. So first, becoming aware, naming it. Okay, now it's the pleaser coming up, doing some what we call PQ reps, or shifting your attention to the present moment, and then choosing. So what they call it, the sage perspective, and there are different sage powers that you can tap into. But more choosing, okay, what's the appropriate action in this moment? How would I like to react instead? And making a more conscious decision or conscious choice about, say, what is the best course of action right now? One of the sage powers also that you can tap into is like, what would my older, wiser self advise me to do right now? I personally love that one, because it's usually, when we ask ourselves, okay, what would my older, wiser self tell me about this situation? That will give you some perspective for sure. And you might say, actually, this is not a big of a deal. Or, so that's definitely something that I use myself. And like yesterday, I was speaking to a client and we were talking about this too. And that could guide her. She's like, yeah, then totally, I will make this decision. It's like, yeah. And there are many other, sage powers too, like innovate, explore, like different, navigate, and emphasize. That's another sage power, to become more empathetic, either with yourself or with others. That can also support you in, how you respond and react to a situation. Say that you are very self-judgmental, which I know many high performers are, like extremely self-critical. So maybe you can tap into that sage power of emphasizing with yourself or with the other person. Say if you're being very judgmental towards them, and to say, what is it in this person that I can emphasize with?
Having that empathy for them.
Exactly. And also definitely for yourself. And there are many ways of, tapping into that power, but looking at the picture of yourself when you're a kid, super innocent, undestroyed by everything, kind of before these saboteurs started coming into your life. And to look at that picture and see, okay, this person was really maybe happy, free, innocent. Like, okay, can I see that part of me still? That I'm still that person?
Yeah, so those are great examples, both the childhood self and then the older, wiser self.
Exactly.
And I like what you were saying about empathy. I was reading yesterday in The Art of Focus by Christina Bengston. And she talks how empathy and focus are really related, because when you have full compassion for someone or for yourself, you're very present.
Absolutely.
So if you're present, you're focused, and then you can also shift, like you said, from that autopilot, maybe that saboteur autopilot, to being more intentional and choosing your response. Absolutely. So I think that's a really nice one. The empathy.
And I think mindfulness is all about that too, to becoming aware and choosing how to respond rather than reacting on autopilot. Because it's like giving that space between thought and reaction. And sometimes that's all we need to be able to respond in a more like either calm or caring or clever way, to just have that little space to decide, okay, how do I want to respond now?
Yes. And so that's the mental fitness part of things. Choosing your sage, tapping into your wisdom, shifting away from your saboteurs. Absolutely. And I know that you also work a lot with well-being. How do you think they relate? And how do you think some people may be listening to this that have the awareness, that their well-being is maybe not where they want to have it, what are some steps they can put into place to improve their well-being in their work environment, but also maybe at home?
Yeah, I think so. The reason why I take, for example, all my clients through this program, through positive intelligence, and I'm a coach within this framework, is because it's like getting to the root cause of their stress, their anxiety, their maybe relationship issues, or what's standing in between, them and, taking their performance to the next level. So I usually start here with the saboteurs because it makes a huge difference to everything else that we do. But when you said that with well-being, yes, I'm very much all about, finding sustainable high performance, because I have a background myself from the burnout industry, what you should say. I burned out really early at the age of 27, pushing myself for, way too hard for too long. But that also led me to discover a lot of things about myself and kind of keys to what I call sustainable high performance. And if I go back and look at what was it that helped me to get out of it, like working proactively with seeing the destructive patterns that I had, that I wasn't really aware of. And there, I think the saboteurs play a big role in understanding the patterns, understanding that inner bitch that I call her. But we can, looking at the saboteurs is kind of taking the inner bitch, but dissecting it and looking, okay, what does it actually tell us? Where does it come from? How does it show up in your life? But becoming aware of that, that's why I work a lot with that. But then also to choose, like become very aware of your values and really making informed and like conscious decisions towards your values. So really act, acceptance and commitment training or coaching, and supporting the clients to go in a direction according to their values, and finding maybe they need to or want to switch career to do something totally different. Tapping into their zone of genius is something I also work a lot with, that I think that when we are working within our zone of genius, where we love what we do, we're great at it, we feel we're making a meaningful contribution to the world, and we get paid well for it, I think that's like a big, big key to finding sustainable high performance and happiness, basically.
So to summarize what you just said, some of the key points: mastering that inner voice, which I think we all have. Absolutely. I recently read That Little Voice by Mo Gaudat. That's an amazing book, and that's all about how our happiness is directly related to that inner talk that we have.
Absolutely.
So yes, mastering the inner voice, then the values, and then the zone of genius. And I'm also really big on the zone of genius. Doing what you love. Ikigai. Getting paid for it, loving it, contributing.
Absolutely. And also something that I didn't mention, but to see how can you insert rest and recovery into your day. To really have this consciousness about what is it that steals your energy or drains your energy, and what is it that fills up your energy. And I usually use the analogy of the energy bucket, like saying that we have a bucket or a glass of energy, and to be aware of what is it actually that drains my energy, what is it that I need then to fill it up with, because we cannot pour from an empty cup. And some things are kind of universal, like sleep, like meditation. There are many things that we need in order to feel great and to fill up our cup. But also the things that drain our energy, that can be different things for different people. But what is draining is that inner bitch. That drains so much of our energy, and it shifts the focus from like, what do you actually want to contribute to and produce in this world, to what if I don't make it? What if they judge me? What if I'm not good enough? I can't possibly, get out there because I'm not pretty enough. Whatever it is, that will steal away focus and energy. So becoming aware of that too, with what drains energy, what fills up your energy, and to work proactively with inserting rest and recovery into your day. It's incredibly important. And that's something I really work with my VIP clients to to see, okay, in your super busy schedule, how can you find recovery in that? Say you have a day full of back-to-back meetings, which I know many of the listeners very well aware of that. And I've been there too. It's like, okay, but how can you still squeeze in rest and recovery? Because again, we cannot pour from an empty cup, and your brain needs space.
Is there a difference between rest and recovery? Do you think of them as two different things?
Yeah, actually, I probably do. It's a great question. But when I think of recovery can be like an opposite activity to what you just did. So for example, say that you've been mentally very focused the whole day, like having a lot of meetings, being very productive, working. Then a recovery for you could be to go out for a walk, doing an opposite activity, using your muscles and your body instead of your brain, letting the brain relax. So that can be an activity that's recovering or giving you recovery while it's still not laying on the sofa, resting. So that's actually something. And also, if you've been very physically active, maybe then recovery for your body will be to sit down and use your brain instead. So finding that kind of opposite activities. But then what is rest then? Rest, obviously, sleep, the most important cornerstone we have, in our health and well-being and performance.
Yes, it has a huge impact on performance. So what do you recommend to these people who have back-to-back meetings all day, these clients that you work with, and they want themselves to have a bit of that space? What do you recommend them?
Oh God, yeah, there's so many things. But the first one, get in charge of your own calendar. Get in charge. Don't let others hijack you and your calendar and your focus and your energy. And seeing how can you be proactive by protecting your time and energy. Make blocks. That's the first thing I usually do with my calendar. Actually, I usually do this in coaching sessions. Can you please share your screen? Share your screen, share your calendar. And then we go in together, we see, okay, here we're going to block. Here we put a block. Here we put a block. So this day can't be full of back-to-back meetings. That means something's got to go. What can you decline? What can you say no to? Can you delegate this? Can you skip it altogether? Or can you move it to another week? Because usually we think we're doing someone or ourselves a favor by just pushing and grinding. But long term, that is what will drain your energy, and it won't lead to better performance either. So, and I know you are all about this, and you're such a role model when it comes to working with, very intentionally with focus time, but also being totally off. And I think that's something we all get to practice and live and do a lot more of. Because this with being 50% on or 50% off, multitasking, it takes so much brain space.
Yes, I'm all full on, full off, full on, full off.
Yeah. And that's what the brain, is for. That's how we optimize our brain and mental fitness. It's not doing 10 things at the same time, because something else, going back to mindfulness, that being in the present moment actually means recovery for the brain. Because multitasking, it's very stressful. It drains a lot of energy. Single tasking, on the other hand, that actually gives your brain recovery. And that's why, say you pay attention to your breathing, just doing that will give your brain recovery and rest.
I love what you just said also about being in charge of your calendar.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things with the back-to-back meetings is the default time meetings take. So if it's like 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour, can we say 45 minutes, 45 minutes, 45 minutes?
Absolutely.
I shifted a lot of my one-on-one coaching when I have a whole afternoon back-to-back, they're 45-minute sessions. So I have 15 minutes in between to walk, to breathe, to reflect on the session, to think and prepare for the next. If I was doing 1 hour back-to-back and 4 coaching sessions in a row,
you will not be a great coach.
No.
So we really get to fill up our own bucket too, to be able to pour into our clients and to be present. Because you can't be present in anything if you go back to back. It's impossible. We need to digest, also what's happening. So that's definitely, take charge and make it an auto setting, default setting to only schedule 50 minutes or 45-minute meetings. And this is a call to all organizations. Like, don't have 1 hour meetings as default.
Yes. I mean, even half an hour, 20 minutes if you can.
Absolutely.
It can be shorter, make it shorter and more effective and efficient. Okay, I'm also thinking, like, if someone's listening to this and thinking they're almost burning out, maybe what are some of the signs that they are on this burnout route? I know that a lot of time people don't have that awareness, and that's why they crash. They're not aware.
Yes.
And then, so what are the signs and what can they do about it?
Yeah, so there are many signs. And usually, like I say, we're very good at fooling ourselves. And the body will give us signals early, but we just usually don't listen and we just keep on pushing. But if I would divide it first into physical symptoms, and then we have emotional symptoms, and we have cognitive symptoms. Starting with some physical symptoms, the obvious ones would be sleeping problems, like having trouble falling asleep or waking up very early, waking up in the middle of the night with a pounding heart. That's definitely, a big sign that your body's under a lot of stress. And the thing is that sleeping problems can lead to all of these other things. But yes, sleep is one. Tense muscles, like a lot of pains, aches, like headaches, migraines, very tense shoulders, classical. Jaws, the jaws get really tense. So that's another thing. And then, what else? There's so many. Dizziness. That's something that I had for 2 years before I burned out. And I wasn't aware that that was related to stress. And then also looking at more like the emotional symptoms. It's like being very irritable or angry, or not really recognizing yourself, being very short and snappy at people, that you're emotionally on like edge, that it's really easy for you to start crying. That's definitely like, okay, you are very, very tense. And then when it comes to cognitive symptoms, this will really impact your performance. And that's the inability to make decisions, forgetfulness, not remembering where you put your keys or where that meeting is or what you just said to a colleague. That's a big sign. But also this brain fog and feeling that your brain is it's like you have syrup in your head. That's what it feels like. Brain fog, it's like a umbrella term that kind of describes this feeling of just numbness and that you really can't think straight, not remembering and not being able to formulate stuff in your head. And as you can tell, and this obviously like decision making and being able to both verbalize complex things, but also to think and problem solve in a complex way, that, that functionality of the brain just gets sacked, basically. Because again, it's like the prefrontal cortex gets so affected by stress and also exhaustion. So, and I mean, they can also see this in brain scans, like someone that is exhausted or really burnt out, they can see shifts in the brain. But the good thing is also then that working with, for example, mindfulness, you can see that too on a brain scan, that just 8 weeks of mindfulness training will shift the way your brain looks on an MR scan or MRI, which is incredible. You just get activation in a different kind of the brain, and you can see how these neurons, they just start working better together. So it's possible to heal. And that's something also I want to send hope, that even if you're experiencing these kind of symptoms, either some of them or all of them, you're not broken. You can get better.
So what can they do?
So what can they do?
Meditation.
Yes, absolutely.
No tech.
Yeah. I would say usually the first thing to see if they can improve is their sleep. Because sometimes people they're like either when we are very stressed, we sleep nothing. You know, our sleep gets super interrupted. It gets like you have insomnia basically, or you sleep for 10 to 12 hours a night, but you get no rest from your sleep. And that's just as bad, but we might not recognize that as a sleeping problem. So it's kind of a lurky one, but to looking at your sleep, that's usually the first thing I do, because without the sleep, it's really tricky to work with all of the other things. But then to seek support, like not think that you have to and can do all of this by yourself. It is really tricky because people are complex. It's not just one thing that makes you end up there, and it's not just one thing that will get you out of it. So we get to look at the person from a holistic perspective and to see, okay, what are the underlying maybe saboteurs that have you had, you know, pushing yourself so hard for so long. That's like one part of it. To stop running, to understanding, okay, what gets to change in your life? What do you want to or need to do differently? How do you insert that rest and recovery? And then mindfulness is an amazing, amazing tool. That's also, I'm a teacher in mindfulness-based stress reduction, and it's also the method that is proven scientifically to be incredibly effective when it comes to both stress, anxiety, chronic pain, and many other symptoms or challenges. But starting to meditate, getting a regular meditation practice can really help a lot. So definitely that, but also not like seeking support is not giving up, it's refusing to give up.
I agree.
Yeah. So asking for help.
Asking for help. I know that one client I helped also to avoid burnout and was very stressed and exhausted. It's true what you said about the saboteurs. It was a very strong high achiever, very strong perfectionism.
Yes.
First thing we did was boundaries. 6 is 6.
Yeah.
Computer off, not working till 10 p.m.
Yeah.
Then breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Then single tasking. Walks at lunchtime. And once you have these structures in place and you're not constantly reachable.
Mm. Exactly. And I had a client reaching out to me. This was more than 6 months ago. And she said, I'm super high performer, like a director at a scale up company. And she's like, I'm afraid I'm heading towards burnout and I need help now. And what we did was she started meditation practice. That was like one of the things. We also said no work after 6. We also looked at her coffee consumption because she wasn't aware that her 4 cups a day were increasing her stress and anxiety so much. And that was one of the things that messed up her sleep. And because she had messed up sleep, you know, she got super stressed and anxious and tired. She had more coffee, and it was a really vicious cycle. So that's what I mean, also looking in a holistic way of your habits, of your thoughts, of your mindset, the saboteurs, and then finding a more healthy way of, you know, basically looking at yourself. And so it's not just one thing. It's usually a combination.
Yes, most things are. Okay, so if someone's listening and they think, I love this idea of having sustainable high performance, not burning out, increasing well-being, what could be a brief audit they could go through, maybe 5 or 6 questions where they look at, okay, one thing would be sleep. Boom, boom, look at their sleep. What would be like 5 or 6 things they could look at and then work on improving?
Yeah, a really great question.
Sleep.
Yeah, sleep, absolutely. Look at, do I have anything? Or actually start looking at your energy bucket. Make a list of what drains my energy, what fills up my energy. And I actually have an exercise on this. We could drop that maybe in the show notes.
Sure.
That they could use. And to see also how can I fill up my energy? Because I think what they will notice is that, okay, I have a ton of stressors and leakage, and I have very little things right now that fill up my energy. So that's usually what they see, that there's a crazy imbalance between the plus and the minus. So that will probably be an epiphany and like realization, like, okay, yeah, no wonder why I'm feeling like I do. Also, like, how much do I actually love what I'm doing? Am I in the right place? That can be a big thing, because sometimes also if we're not feeling appreciated or feeling like we actually are doing an amazing job, because sometimes it can also be that there is maybe an untapped potential or possibility of you to doing something totally different that would make you feel awesome.
Which we both did.
Which we both did, exactly. Switching career, finding something that you're incredibly passionate about, that you're awesome at, that you can get paid for, and that the world needs. So that's why, for me, that working with Ikigai for my clients is such an important piece. And that's when they see, like, oh, okay, I actually have amazing skills here that I have not been using. So it's like an, really untapped potential. Yes, well-being. So the sleep, the energy bucket, the drains. Am I doing something that I'm passionate about?
Relationships. Are you isolating yourself?
Yeah, because that's actually, I forgot to mention that, but that's a very big thing when it comes to when you get very stressed and anxious. The first thing you do is like you stop with all the fun stuff. You stop meeting your friends. You stop hanging out with, with people you love. You get more and more focused on your work. And the thing is, when your brain is not working properly, it's hard to both be very focused and productive and also to switch off. So it's like a vicious cycle of working more and more, maybe because your brain is not really able to process and make decisions and think clearly. And then you start isolating because you don't have time for all of the fun stuff. And then at the end, you're just about work, basically, and survival. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the case for a lot of people. Actually, it's not uncommon. And it's so that's why it can be, just recognizing where you are on this scale. Like, am I happy? Am I productive?
I do have boundaries also. I'm hearing what you're saying. Yeah. Do I have a separation? Do I have a moment I stop working? Is there a full day or 2 days a week where I just no computer, no emails, no phone? Yeah. And if you don't, it gets all intercrossed.
Yeah. Do I have time to have a meal together with, my family or with friends? Or do I eat in front of the laptop the whole time? Do I think I'm being more productive by never taking breaks? Like tricking yourself into thinking you are just efficient, but it's the opposite.
Yes, it totally
working, longer and longer hours to make up for the fact that it's really tricky to get stuff done. Oh, I totally did that. That's the thing. The last weeks leading up to my burnout, I was working probably 90-hour weeks. And I did have a lot to do. I was project managing a project back then. And when it was finally finished, that's when I crashed. But I totally wasn't effective during all of those hours because my brain was just like syrup.
It's a vicious circle.
Yeah.
You're less effective, so you work more hours, you become less effective.
Absolutely. And your sleep gets disturbed because you never rest and you don't have time to, recover during the evening. And that's actually something too that I'm a big advocate for, is to unwind before you go to bed. To have some kind of ritual where you slow down and make that transition from a busy day to like preparing your mind and body for sleep. Because when we don't do that and kind of expect our body and mind to just shut off and go to bed, that doesn't happen. It's like it needs some kind of heads up. It's like, okay, we're going to sleep soon. So give yourself that space and time to relax and let go of your day. If it's by journaling or stretching, going for a walk, having a cup of herbal tea, all of these things that just get your stress levels down. Because if you go to bed with an elevated heart rate or high stress levels, your sleep will be messed up. So that can be one, very concrete thing to check. How is my bedtime ritual? We might not think about that for adults. We think about it for kids. Like, oh, then you do this and you read the book and you put on the pajamas and brush your teeth. But it's actually just as important for us adults to have some kind of transition, to turn down the lights, maybe put on some soft music and just not do that vigorous exercise just before going to bed.
Yes, I like that. We often talk about morning routines, but it's true we don't talk as often about bedtime routines, and it makes such a difference.
It does. It does. Just for example, yesterday I had lots of thoughts in my head, and I usually do a meditation before I go to bed. Last night I didn't for some reason. I just went to bed, and then I was laying there in bed, awake, and just like my head spinning. I'm like, okay, Sofia, get up, go, sit down, just meditate or write down all of these thoughts instead of laying awake in your bed. So note to myself, because even if I know all of this stuff, I still mess it up. No one is perfect. I'm fully aware of the things I do that, okay, this wasn't awesome. But still, we all human. So even if we're aware of it, it's okay to, slip. But I think for me, a big key has been monitoring, for example, sleep I have an Aura ring and a Garmin watch, and just seeing what difference does it make when I do this versus when I don't. And then you have data, and I know many people probably listening to this are data driven. So to see, can you hack your health, and looking at the data to see what is it actually that makes a difference. Can you see an increase in your deep sleep if you meditate before going to bed or reducing caffeine?
It's true. I mean, I think that in the example you gave, for example, with skipping the meditation before sleep, you instantly felt the difference. It's like
absolutely. I'm like,
It's like I'm really big on the lunch walks, and I always go for a walk after lunch. But there are the odd times where maybe I've done it shorter, or I've skipped it, or I've done it a bit later in the day, and then I also feel it instantly. So we feel these things when we practice them regularly.
Absolutely. Or when I skip a meditation in the morning, like on Tuesday, I really want to get out my own podcast episode. And so I skipped the meditation in the morning. I went straight to my computer and I started working. And then all of a sudden I realized it was 4:00. I'm like, I didn't meditate today. And I had been so scattered, like my focus was all over the place. And I kept multitasking, jumping from one thing to another. I was not effective. I just realized I didn't meditate. And I'm like, okay, yep, note to self. This is what happens when I don't. Yes. And just getting on the horse again, because we always have a second chance, to make a change and to see, what works, what doesn't.
Amazing. Yeah. We've covered so much.
So many things.
With a mental fitness, a sustainable high performance, how to avoid burnout, the signs of burnout, what to do about it. What would be your last piece of advice, recommendation, maybe someone listening who's struggling with this or is really inspired by this idea of sustainable high performance? What would you like to share with them that we haven't maybe said so far, that you feel is something they could implement or put in place?
Yeah, that would probably be one of my favorite quotes by Katie Reed. It's like, self-care is giving the world the best of you instead of what's left of you.
Oh, that's so nice. I love that.
Yeah, it's really, I get goosebumps now.
So nice.
Yeah, and it's true, because when we take care of ourselves and our mental health, we will be able to give more to the world, and to give more to, our family, to our friends, to our colleagues, to everything that we are involved in. But when we put ourselves on the last, place on your to-do list, everything else will suffer, and you're not doing anyone a favor, even if we think we do. So paying attention to yourself and taking your own needs and your well-being seriously will support you in all areas of your life. Yeah.
200%. Yeah. Agree. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sofia, for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I loved having this conversation with you.
Thank you.